Folks, and welcome back to another episode of your Brains Coach podcast. My name is Angela Shurina. I'm your host, I'm your Brains Coach, and it is my job here to bring to you all the best, cutting edge, recent, most interesting, fascinating, and useful brain body tools so you can take better control of your brain, make better decisions, take better actions, and ultimately design your life experience much closer to the way you want it to be. So today, folks, we're going to talk about procrastination. We talked quite a few times about procrastination on this podcast. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up, because there is a new book just came out that I'm finishing and gonna go into details on Friday. I'm doing an audio event tomorrow on LinkedIn. And procrastination is just an important topic that I don't think we fully understand yet. But I personally, having read through a lot of literature and listening to peak performance and neuroscience research, I figured out a neat system that cancel procrastination in my life forever. And I taught many of my clients, entrepreneurs, and friends also this framework about procrastination that I personally use. I taught them it, and they also stopped procrastinating on things that they were actually serious about making happen. Because step number one in canceling procrastination is setting the priorities right. Maybe you procrastinate on a thing because it's truly not important. And it's one of those shoots that doesn't really matter. And, we people will like to shoot ourselves in a lot of things. Like, my friend is doing this. Oh, my friend is doing that. I should be also doing that. But should you, right? And then you procrastinate on that. Well, maybe for a good reason. So procrastination isn't always bad. But when you have an intention to do something and you don't, and it becomes a pattern that hurts your life, your career, your business, that's when it becomes problematic. And that's when you want to look closely at why you procrastinate on so many things. And that conversation, I'd like to start actually with something that is outside of this discussion, somewhere outside on the mountain. And that's going to bring us to reason why, number one, why we procrastinate and how we can address this pattern. So again, it doesn't interfere with our life plans and intentions and our aspirations, our audacious aspirations for a better future tomorrow that we need to create today. So let's talk about the mountain. I already shared in this podcast the stories that now in Cape Town, I'm a part of this group that goes and hikes the mountain Lion's Hat every Friday morning. And I remember looking at the mountain before I climbed it a few times. I remember looking at it and thinking to myself, it looks so impossible to go up there. Like the top of the mountain, it's almost entirely like rocky. There are a lot of rocks. It's not like an easy walk to the top. And from the perspective of when you're down there, not on the mountain, but far away, it looks so impossible to climb there. I was thinking to myself quite a few times, like, how do people get there? And people who are not climbers, but regular people. And so it felt impossible. But, once upon a time, life gave me an invitation and we told a whole bunch of people. We were at a sales workshop. He told us about his walks every Friday to the top of this mountain. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. People do that. I feel like I want to do that. So I'm going to sign up. And I signed up. And of course, on the morning, it was actually the meeting was at 6 a.m. And on the morning of the climb, of my first climb, I felt so much resistance. I'm like, where are you going? It's dark. You've never done it. It's like the mountain. What if you, fall and die? My mind went to all of these places. But I'm like, I decided to go. I said to Will, I'm going to go. So I'm going to go. And no matter what happens, I didn't tell you one important detail. I'm slightly or sometimes a lot afraid of heights. So that was also kind of an issue. I'm like, it's quite high out there. Are you sure, Angela? But I decided I'm not going to think about that. I decided I'm going to take it. And folks, this is important. One step at a time. I'm just going to, the whole walk, I'm going to focus on one step, the step in front of me. And actually, I interviewed Emily Balcetis. She is a neuroscience researcher in New York University. And when she interviewed elite athletes like Olympic runners, for example, and she asked them, where do you focus on when you have to run a marathon and you have to win it, right? And you have to almost like race the whole 42 kilometers. And she thought they were focusing on the winning, on like having this plan for the whole 42 kilometers, and they were focusing far ahead. But then they actually told her that in every single case, all the winners, all the elite runners, they said, I just focus on the next milestone, like on the next almost tree that I see that is far away, on the next person to overcome, to overrun, just the next closest milestone I can think of, and I just focused there. And she was surprised, but then she also interviewed a bunch of other people, business owners and artists who worked on long-term projects. And what she found is that all of them focused when they were working on this audacious, big and long-term project, all of them focused only on the next step. Because in those projects, there is so much unpredictability and uncertainty and so many things you have to do that for the mind, if you focus on the whole thing, it feels overwhelming. And most often than not, people who focus on the whole thing just quit. That's why elite performers actually learned that focusing only on the next step works for them much better. And then they can also do much better job at that small step, the only step that actually matters for the whole journey, the next step and how you show up for it. And then I also interviewed a former Navy SEAL commander, Rich Davini, who trained a lot of elite Navy SEALs to go through the training and then go to them on the different missions. And he shared the same tool that they use as Navy SEALs, that as Navy SEALs, they go through a lot of situations and missions where most of the things are unpredictable. And even the duration of mission is unknown. And the amount of resources, like physical resources and other resources, just unknown. And they also figured out that in order to perform effectively at each step of the mission, they need to only focus on the next step. Otherwise, people would become anxious, overwhelmed, and they wouldn't be able to perform with excellence at the only step that mattered, the next step. And so going to that mountain, I already knew about these tools. And I'm like, I'm just going to do what elite performers do and focus only on one step at a time. And I did that. And 6 a.m. in the morning, it was dark. I couldn't even see how high it was and how far above sea level I was. People were like, oh, look at that view. I'm like, I'd rather not and focus on what's under my feet. So the first time I climbed that mountain, it was more of a scaring experience. So I just focused literally on the next step. And then when we were almost at the top and there was some climbing and you had to hold on the rocks, and very often you were in a situation that if you look at your side, you just would see everything that is below, right? There was nothing to hold on to. There was just all the way down like these views, but basically you could just fall in and that's it. And at this point, I realized, I definitely need to just focus on one step at a time. I didn't know how it would go down because, going up was kind of easier. But then I did. We went all the way up, and some folks helped me in the difficult moments. I told them about my, slight fear of heights, and also that it's my first time and I didn't climb anything till this point. So they were really nice to giving me a hand or asking if I was okay. So that was amazing. I realized I was in a really great group of people. And so we went all the way to the top, and then we went also all the way to the bottom, and I just took one step at a time. There were moments when I felt scared, but then I did, the same climb the second time, the third time, and it felt like, like nothing special. And it was funny to feel also that transformation. But back to our procrastination, what I'm getting here at, folks, is that if I were to think about the whole experience and how would it all go, and how would I go up, and how would I go down, and what I'm going to feel, and if I expected myself to know everything and to feel 100% certainty, if I thought about the whole experience, I would probably just not go. So I focused on one step at a time. But when you think about it, what I did is I lowered the entry cost in my mind into action. Everything that I was focusing on was the next step. That was a very simple thing to do. You can always do the next step. And so when we procrastinate on bigger projects, and that's what business top performers and artists and people who work again on long-term audacious projects, what they figured out, to not procrastinate, or writers who write books that sometimes take years, how do they not procrastinate on starting? Well, they don't procrastinate because they also figure out this brain hack, focusing only on the next step, on the next page, on the next sentence, will lower the price, so to speak, the cost of that action. The action becomes cheaper, requiring less energy in your brain's frame. And you are much more likely to start taking that action. It almost becomes inevitable. Like if the action is so easy, just do it. Your brain likes doing stuff. It just doesn't like to do stuff that is too hard, too complex, requires too much energy. But accomplishing things and getting rewards, even if the reward is just a feeling, your brain loves it. Every time you get this dopamine and you get this, serotonin, and you get a little bit more confident, and your brain loves accomplishing things and like taking action steps, because action steps lead to rewards and again, better opportunities and more thriving in your life, better success. But the hack here to a long and big and uncertain audacious project is the lower entry cost, or lower the bar. So the first step is really tiny. And that's what I practiced when I was climbing that mountain, one step at a time. I made it very, very simple to take action. If you want to write a book, you gotta focus only on the next step, like coming up with the title, or maybe not just sitting down and writing the first sentence, or maybe writing for 10 minutes. Like it's a legitimate tool or exercise that a lot of writers use to never get stuck, but instead continue working on a long project. Just focus on the next 5 minutes of writing. That's it. So the first system, the first hack to procrastination, to hacking your procrastination that I teach to all of my clients and all my friends who struggle with that, lower the entry cost, lower the bar of the first step, make it super simple, super clear, super easy, so you almost want and crave that step, and the action, it becomes almost again inevitable. So this is step number one to overcome procrastination on those long-term, audacious, big, uncertain projects that at the end will require a lot of time and a lot of work. But that first step, the one that's going to get you hooked on taking action, make it super simple. And then there is only the next step. And then there is the next step. You only, at any point in time, need to take the next step and give it your best. But, don't overwhelm yourself with doing your best. Just take the action, because without that action, there is no best. There is nothing actually. So lower the bar for the first step. And then back to the mountain. Maybe that's why the mountain doesn't start with the steepest part. Not usually, but it kind of eases you into the challenge. Isn't that so? And that kind of life works. If you think about that, if you look at any long-term projects, a lot of times the hardest things are not going to be at the beginning, but somewhere closer to the end. And a lot of times you look back down and like, if I knew that's going to be that hard, I would not be taking that step. But that's the beauty of it. Sometimes you need to fool yourself into thinking, then it's going to be just as easy as the first step. But then also you get stronger. So this is step number 1 that I teach to all of my clients, all of my friends, that also myself, whenever I feel resistant to taking action on any big project, I'm like, only the next first step. Just like doing this podcast. I wanted to tell a story about the mountain more than anything. And the rest, I'll figure out. So the first step to overcome procrastination on complexity, on long, audacious, uncertain, big projects that overwhelm you, lower the bar to take the first action. Make it cheap. By cheap, I mean requiring little energy, because your brain doesn't care about the money. Well, not directly, but it does care about energy that is required to take action, because your brain's primary purpose is to keep you alive. And to keep you alive, your brain has to make sure that you first and foremost don't run out of energy, because every single cell in your body, in your brain, run on energy. If there is no energy, there is no life. That's what your brain is concerned with. And that's why when you try to imagine the complexity, the size of the whole project, and it feels like it will require a lot of sacrifice and energy, that's when you start to procrastinate. Your brain doesn't want you to do that. And so lower the bar, make the first step simple, and you're already halfway there. The second concept that I also learned from Navy SEALs, Rich Davini, but then also David Goggins popularized it and made it almost like movie-like epic. Embrace the suck. And also the same thing Ryan Holiday talks. He popularized Stoic in teachings in modern days. He has amazing books. I like every single book. Just such a pleasure to read, and you learn so much from it. So the obstacle is the way, and what I again learned from Rich Davini that I love even more, embrace the suck. So the obstacle is the way means, yes, there are going to be things and projects that are challenging, but also if you want to grow, if you want to develop, if you want to get better, please folks realize, and I also teach that same framing, the same thinking to all my clients, please realize that challenge is the way to growth, to development, to that success that you desire. Because if you were already that person who embodied this success, you would already have it. And if you're not there yet, you need to grow. And improvement and growth always go through challenges. There is no growth, no improvement if you don't challenge yourself. Just like an athlete, if you don't challenge yourself with more mileage, for example, you're not going to get better at running half marathons or whatever it is you run. If you want to take on a bigger goal, if you want to achieve bigger result, if you want to, again, get better at, from sprinting to marathons, you need to train, you need to challenge yourself. And so the obstacle, the challenge is the way. And once you realize that, you all of a sudden don't look at that challenge that you want to procrastinate on as something to avoid, but instead you want to embrace it because you understand now that this is the way. And if you decide to say no to this challenge, it means you decide to say no to the growth, to the success you desire. You basically deciding to stagnate. And when I spell it out to my clients, they're like, I didn't think about that this way. I was still trying to avoid the hard thing. But now I understand that the obstacle is the way, that the challenge is the way, that if I am to avoid this, I'm not going to get where I actually want to be. So this is the second framework and concept that I teach to all of my clients. It's just different kind of thinking. You start looking at a different side of the same coin. Like, imagine a coin. It has two sides. Depending which side you look at, it's different. So the same with the challenge. You can look at it as something to be avoided and something undesirable, or you can welcome it because this is the way to growth, to your desired outcome, to your success. So the obstacle is the way, and the Navy SEALs way, embrace the suck. The second couple of things, I'm going to briefly talk through them. And on Friday, folks, stay tuned for our deep dive into the new book, Your Future Self, How to Make Better Tomorrow Today by Hal Harshfield. He talks about also this, why do we procrastinate on things that are good for our future selves? And there is a lot of research, studies, interesting stories. So we're going to do a deep dive on Friday. But today I wanted to bring something that I learned from other resources related to that future self, to that procrastination tendency that we often fall into. So the second, two other things that I can teach all of my clients, and I learned at some point myself from different resources. So we procrastinate on things that our brain believes are not as urgent as all the other things. What I mean by that is your brain is a great machine, and it has been keeping you alive till this point. It's been bringing food on your table. It has put a roof over your head. It made sure you didn't die. So your brain doesn't procrastinate on the important stuff. The stuff you procrastinate on, somewhere in your brain, you believe it's not as urgent as all the other stuff. And so your job is to talk yourself into understanding that this is actually urgent and you cannot afford to procrastinate. What am I talking about here? So what I'm talking about here, about my work example, I want to grow my business, and I'm kind of sick of being on the same level, to be honest. And I understand in order to get to the next level, I need to not just do the work that I do now, but also do more and do better, and reach out to new companies, to new organizations, and think about new way to collaborate with experts, with influencers. And do I have to do that? No, I'll probably survive just fine not doing that. But I talk myself into understanding that if I don't do that now, and everything takes time, we know that nothing gonna happen in like nanosecond. Collaborations with other people takes time. And so I talk myself into understanding that if I don't start now, that future that I desire is going to be delayed by weeks, months, and years. And every day I wake up and I make this notion urgent. If you don't over deliver today, Angela, that future that you want, you're delaying it by weeks, months, and years, and sometimes even decades. So I make it urgent in my brain. Like the action itself is not urgent. There is nobody pressuring me into doing it now. There is no imminent danger for me now. But I know I have to do it now because I understand that the future I want is going to be delayed by a lot more if I don't take the action now. And so I create artificial urgency because, again, there's nothing that is truly urgent. It's not like I'm dying, but that's where most people get stuck. They don't talk themselves into the urgency of long-term projects that will change their life exponentially. And so if you would find yourself procrastinating on those non-urgent projects, understand that it's this talk in your head that is happening somewhere at the background, that your brain, that you fundamentally believe that it can wait. And your job is to, and that's my job as a coach, to talk a person through the process, making them understand that if they don't do it now and they don't feel that urgency, that urge to accomplish it now, that thing might never happen. And they never gonna have that result and those opportunities that they say they want. I almost like make people feel pain, a lot of it right now, so they take the action because they say they want this outcome that's gonna take time anyway. So this is the first thing that I teach people to go through this conversation, to create more pain, more urgency, so your brain actually feels that this is freaking important, not just the other stuff that's on your to-do list. And then the last but not least, definitely not least, your brain simply forgets. You procrastinate because you didn't create a note, an appointment in your schedule. You procrastinate because there are so many things that you always get distracted. You didn't create a trigger that will make you perform action at the desired time with the desired frequency. You didn't create any sorts of change in your environment that will make the habit, for example, you want to start running. You didn't set it on your calendar. You didn't allocate the time. You didn't get together the clothing. You didn't put your shoes out. You didn't set your alarm. You didn't create accountability. And so your brain is like kind of busy with all the other stuff that you usually do. And you simply forget. And you forget one day and second day and third day. So you gotta, what the science tells us, if you want to start new habit, for example, if you want to take action, if you want to stop forgetting about appointments or calls, you gotta create, first of all, one of the best ways, create a recipe, how, when, what, when, and how. Create a narrative, a picture with that action. So let me explain what I mean. Okay, you decided to start running. In your head, you sit down and you say, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m., I'm going to put my shoes on no matter what the weather's like, and I'm gonna go and run for 30 minutes, and I'm going to choose this route. I'm going to go up the road and, I don't know, maybe run through the park and then come back. And that's going to be my running routine, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m. in the morning, no matter what the weather. So you want to walk yourself through the whole process like it's already happening. And by doing so, you're building this neural connection, and your brain knows what to do now on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The next step is to install hot reminders. So on Monday, 6 a.m., or maybe even, if you need to prepare shoes, set an alarm for a Sunday evening, and you're going to take your shoes out and then set an alarm for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's going to that's going to turn on, and you're going to put your shoes on, and then you're going to go and run. So those are hot reminders, those, put it in your schedule, set the alarm, walk yourself through this recipe in your head, when you're going to run, what you're going to wear, what, the weather conditions, are there any, what route you're going to take. And the less decisions you have to make after that, the more likely you are to take that action. And again, creating these reminders, accountability, alarms, hot triggers, meaning things that remind you to take action at the moment when you need to take action, like alarm going off when you have to go for a run. All of that will help you to not forget. And this is another concept, again, that I teach to all of my clients. It's not like people intend to forget and just talk about things. No, sometimes you just forget. You have a busy life, and the busier your life gets, the more responsibilities you take, the more of those things you have to do. A lot of my clients say I put my workouts, my lunches, I put everything, taking care of myself, taking a bath into my calendar, even my sleep into my calendar, because otherwise it's like my calendar going to be filled up with something else that I didn't plan, and I'll never have time to take care of myself. So to sum it up, I think the episode is already quite long. The most important thing about procrastination, especially on long, audacious projects or climbing a mountain, make the first step easy. Make it small, make it tiny, make it feel cheap in your brain when it comes to energy. And then we also talked about how to create urgency and how to embrace the suck, and the obstacle is the way, and how your brain simply forgets, and you need to create reminders and triggers. And when you put all of this together, it becomes almost impossible for you to procrastinate. Or you look at the action and you're like, you know what? It's somebody else's shoot, and I should just throw it away and stop thinking about that, wasting my mind's energy and my decisions on that process. That, by the way, your decision, your thinking are also expensive processes. The more you do, the more you think about things that you procrastinate on, the less you have for other decisions that might be more important. So remove all the shoulds that you don't actually want or plan to do, that don't mean anything. That being said, folks, in the show notes of this podcast today, there is a link to our pajama-friendly audio event. Now it's regular. Last time we had 12 people. It's on LinkedIn audio event where we're going to be talking about procrastination, and I'm going to bring more tools, and you'll have the opportunity to come on stage and ask your questions. It's fun experience, so the link is in the show notes. It's free event. It's 30 minutes. It's pajama friendly. It's audio only. You can be anywhere doing anything and still tune in. So fun experience. It's happening at 12 p.m. Eastern time or 6 p.m. Berlin or European time, and then 9 a.m. Pacific. So join us for this event. And folks, the best thing for me, if you want to do something good to reciprocate, please do share this podcast with as many people as possible, because you don't want people you care about to procrastinate on their dreams, their goals, their desires, on making their life better, creating the kind of life that they are proud of and excited about living. So share, folks. Check out the link to our pajama-friendly audio event and stay tuned. And don't procrastinate. Now you know how.